What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of the Roundtable, brought to you by Blog and the Boys, powered by SB Nation. You know, it's not RJ Ocho. I said it last time, and people welcomed me with open arms, and I'm hoping you guys could do that again. Welcome. I'm here with a good cast, a great cast actually, and I'm excited to be here again. And I'll start with you, Chris. Chris Holling, to my right. Chris, how are you feeling? And if you had to pick a number to be in the NFL, what would your number be, and would it be 0?
I'm doing good. If I were to pick a number, I would probably do number 7. I don't know. I just like the number 7. I always have. Maybe
Okay.
that lucky number
Trayvon
7.
Diggs.
Yeah.
Perfect. So then to the bottom of him is Danny Phantom. Danny, I want to ask you what your favorite number is, but I'll ask you briefly where you stand on the 0 issue. Are you in? Are you out? Is it weird? How do you feel about it?
Well, my feeling is this, and I tweeted this earlier. I'm indifferent about it. I think that if you're playing well, it will grow on everybody. They'll get used to it and they'll like it. If you're not, then you're going to look ridiculous. So that's my feeling on it. And yeah, my favorite number, the number I'd be, I'm Danny Phantom 24. So I mean, it's going to be 24. Everson Walls started there, and that's kind of just been our family number since. So for sure, and the Mamba wore it too. Willie Mays wore it. All my favorites wore it. Even Barry Bonds, who's switched to 25, wore it at one point. So all my favorites seem to find that number. So it would be 24 for me.
What about Ken Griffey Jr.? Was he 24? Am I
He was.
Yeah. That's a good number. That's actually a high quality number there. And Brandon C., what is your number?
For me, it's the number 21. I was born on the 21st of September. Deion Sanders is my favorite player of all time, so it fit. Playing youth football and then all the way up throughout the ranks of school, I wore the number 21 whenever I could, unless someone stole it from me. But I've always loved the number 21, and it was nice to see Zeke wearing it. Now it's going to be cool to see Gilmore wearing it. So I'm excited to see how he does with 21 on.
I wanted to ask you, Danny, because Danny, you've been a Cowboys fan for the longest, just based on age and seniority here. Where is your stance on this wasn't on the list, but where's your stance with the Stephon Gilmore wearing 21? Is that added pressure? Is that something that, like, man, you better be able to bring it if you're wearing the star in the 21, or do you think it's no big deal?
No big deal. I mean, I'm not a big Deion fan. In fact, I won't get into it, but he's not, for several reasons, he's not one of my favorites for sure. So, I mean, I love Zeke wearing it, and I love Julius Jones wearing it. I don't care. So, I mean, I think it's great. And here, I'll say this, and this won't be a very popular opinion, but hey, you got into this, so you asked for it. It wouldn't have crushed me. It wouldn't have hurt my feelings if Brandon Cooks wore number 12. I know it's sacred in Cowboys Nation, and you're not going to find a bigger fan than Roger Staubach. I mean, I think that what he's brought to this team is just, I mean, you can't even measure that. But at the same time, it's a number, and to me, it would just look different. So I just don't have a problem with it. I'm not one of those like, how dare you type of people that you wear a number and it's just like, is anybody upset about Damone Clark running around with 33? No. So I think it's one of those things it would be easy to just kind of get past if you just let it run its course and you get a little used to it. So that's my feeling on that. No problem at all. Gilmore's gonna, it's about time we had a hard working corner that wore 21 that was fundamentally sound and isn't afraid to tackle. So more power to you, Stephon.
Chris, I wanted to ask you, I mean, a little bit about the Deion Stephon Gilmore thing at 21. One, what's your thoughts on that? And two, how do you feel about Brandon Cooks in the 3? I mean, I know we're talking about numbers. I didn't really plan on starting this, but when Micah Parsons and Jaron Kearse are fighting over 0, I think that we should lead off the show with a little bit of number talk.
Yeah, for sure. I actually like the 21 just because that whole Deion connection. I think that'll be pretty cool. In terms of Brandon Cooks wearing 3, I think he'll look good in it. I'm not opposed to somebody getting number 12 again in Dallas, but I think it should be someone who's drafted and someone who really has his whole career kind of in Dallas. Like, I don't want to just give it to, a vet who we trade for late in his career kind of thing. But yeah, no, like overall, I like the 21. I think it's a little interesting how quickly it got, taken after we let go of Ezekiel Elliott, but I guess it's the business, and Stephon Gilmore had his choice of numbers. So I'm excited to see him wear 21. And I think that maybe it's that kind of a Deion Sanders-esque pickup. I don't know.
Hey, so I wanted to save this question for you, Brandon. I know you're his biggest fan, so how do you feel about Brandon Cooks taking number 3? Does this mean the end of Anthony Brown as we know it? I know you. I'm sure you're not too upset about that.
I'm certainly not too upset about that. You guys know how I feel about Anthony Brown. All respect in the world. I hope he gets well with everything with his injury. Nothing, no hatred there, of course. But I'm ready to move on from Anthony Brown. See, and that's the thing with Deion Sanders. I know a lot of people are going to give him flack for not tackling. He wasn't known as a tackler, but he was a playmaker. He caught some. He was a good receiver as well. Heck of a baseball player. He just did a lot of the things that when I was a kid, like I just watched all the. He was a flashy guy. So like as a kid, that was just somebody I looked up to in that aspect. And he was just a lot of fun in the return game. It's just. I just tell people if you haven't, a lot of, especially Chris, Chris is, he's a youngster. So it's like anyone that's young like that, I always say, go watch the highlights. I mean, you'll see some great plays from him. I get the technical stuff on the tackling and whatnot, but Deion Sanders to me is one of the most electric players in the league history. And on the baseball side, fun fact, Ken Griffey Jr. is actually my favorite Major League Baseball player of all time. So when you guys are talking Griffey, 24 is a good number too. But 21 for me is always going to be it's Deion Sanders in my book, no matter what.
For what it's worth, and nobody cares, but I'll say it anyway. I grew up in Worcester, Massachusetts. I played for the Worcester Cowboys. I played quarterback, so of course I was number 8. My favorite number is 8. It's still number 8. It's attached to my email. It's attached to everything I do. So for anybody who cares what number my favorite number is it's for 8. It's for Troy Aikman, and it is what it is. That's my guy. It's always going to be my guy. And I know there's a ton of debate about Troy Aikman and the history and his ranking in quarterbacks, but he's my guy, and that's just I'm sticking to that. But to kind of get back on track and to talk about what we came here to talk about, which was the future of the offensive line, I wanted to get us back on track with that. There's been a lot of rumblings, and Mike McCarthy, Stephen Jones, a lot of people get to talk about the Cowboys or talk with the media today from the Cowboys at the coaches meetings or the owners meetings there. And we want to kind of initiate it. And I'll start off with you, Danny. The report is the Cowboys are taking a look at Terence Steele, a left guard. That is the report out there from Clarence Hill. Do you believe it? Are you buying it? And what is your initial thoughts?
I am not buying it. I think it's a complete facade. And here's what I think of this. There's a lot of reasons why I think this is just not a good idea, but I think that what's behind this is the Cowboys are just trying to paint a picture that they're just going to be open-minded to all possibilities. They're going to, find the best 5 guys is what we'll probably hear a lot, as we build up through camp and then towards the regular season. But I think what this is really doing, I think it sets the table for the Cowboys not playing Tyron Smith at points during this season, because I think when you look at things and the dust settles, you're going to find your 2 best tackles are going to be the young guys. And remember, Tyron Smith is on a very cleverly constructed contract that is he gets paid based on playing time. And to me, I think we know that Tyron Smith it's really a long shot for him to survive a full season. So they may want to try to preserve his health. They may try to end up he may be the swing guy, and I think they'll be able to do that if they say, we explored all these different possibilities and we're just making the decision what's best for the team. I think that's going to be something that Tyron Smith wouldn't be having an issue with. To me, I think this is I think it's a facade. I'll get into it later, but I just think that there's so many bad reasons that you would pull Terence Steele from his tackle spot. So I don't buy into it at all.
Chris, I want to ask you, there's so many different ways the Cowboys can handle this tackle position and how they're going to address left guard. Why did it feel like this is the only one that nobody was talking about or thought was the right answer? Like, are you just totally thinking that this is smoke and that Terence Steele at left guard is eventually something that just we'll never see actually happen?
Yeah, I think it's smoke, and I think it's smoke for 2 reasons. A, it's smoke because then the Cowboys can kind of hide their interest in maybe a left guard early in the draft. I also think it's smoke, too, because the Cowboys are going to be in active negotiations on a contract with Terence Steele. And, when you make him a left guard. And when you talk about him being a backup swing tackle, guess what that does? It kind of devalues him a little bit. And, I don't want to accuse the front office of doing that, but, it is business. So I think it's smoke. I don't see it happening. It just doesn't really make sense to me. I mean, we have a left tackle who we drafted to play left guard, and a former all-pro left tackle is moving to the right tackle so that the right tackle can play left guard. You're just playing a game of musical chairs at that offensive line position by doing that. It doesn't really make sense to me. I think if you're planning on starting Tyron Smith, then I think, and Terence Steele is healthy, you got to put Terence Steele at that right tackle spot and then just kick Tyler Smith into that left guard position. So that would be my ideal 5. But yeah, no, I think it's smoke. I don't buy it.
Brandon, for me, when I look at this, it just, I have more questions than I have answers. So I wanted to ask you one of these questions. Does this tell you something about Terence Steele's development, or do you think this is actually something that's real?
I don't think it's really much of a. I don't think it's a development situation. I just think it, like Chris's point. I just think it's completely a smokescreen. If you had to do anything for a swing tackle, to me, it's always going to be Tyler Smith until Tyron Smith is out. I know Tyron Smith. He hasn't played since a full season since 2015, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously, we're all expecting him to miss time. So the perfect situation here is you leave Terence Steele at the right tackle position, where he's played very well. I think he's improved so much since he came in as an undrafted free agent. And then Tyler Smith, keep him at guard for now. I think he's done a good job at left tackle when needed. But Tyron Smith is keep him at left tackle until, unfortunately, we expect him to, he's probably gonna get hurt again. And that's, I hate saying that, but that's just the reality of things. So for me, it's, you put Tyler Smith, Elder Smith, Younger Smith on the left side, and then you keep Terence Steele at right tackle. And you know what? It's always going to be smokescreen season when you're close to April, and it's hiding the fact that I think the Cowboys I would say by day 2, they're taking an interior offensive lineman. I think that's, they may wait till maybe day 3 of the 4th round for Voorhees out of USC to make because he's going to be out with the ACL injury, but he was a high end prospect. He could sit as a red shirt, which gives them time, to see what happens with Tyron Smith. And then when Tyron Smith's out the door, you slide Tyler Smith over, you put Voorhees at left guard, you leave Terence Steele at right tackle, and then you're good to go. I mean, they also could go with I think it's Torrance out of the Gators, University of Florida. That's another guy who could be targeted at 26. I think it would not be a smart move. Terence Steele has done a heck of a job at the right tackle position. Anywhere else for him on the line, it's a detriment to the roster and a detriment to the offensive line.
Yeah, you guys made a point before we kind of go forward. I want to remind everybody who's been a veteran to the roundtable. I will be keeping score. So just going to keep score here. We will have a winner at the end of this. And before we kind of pivot here, I want to give my little 2 cents on it. For me, it's perplexing, right? Because there's so many different things that I would rather do than move Terence Steele to left guard. I think I would rather kick Tyler inside. The development is fine for him, but at the same time, I want the best 5 offensive linemen out there. If Tyron Smith is that guy, if it's Tyler Smith, the left tackle, I mean, even play Farniok at the left guard spot or a draft pick. So I just think there's multitude of different things you can do that doesn't involve Terence Steele playing left guard. That's just my 2 cents on that, for whatever that's worth. But I kind of wanted to pivot off of this. And Danny, I'll start with you. What is your best O-line configuration right now, currently constructed? That may include a draft pick, an early round guy, but what do you have as your starting 5 left or right?
I think in a perfect world where you have a healthy Tyron Smith, I'm going to put him back at left tackle, slide Tyler Smith at left guard, and then have Beatish Martin and then Terence Steele. That would be my best 5. And I really think, you guys have all said it, and I think we all agree. But a player like Terence Steele, if you look at his length and his quickness, I mean, he gets off the ball quicker than any one of the best in the league. Definitely one of the best on our offensive line. And he gets to a spot real quick, and I just don't think you want to waste that quickness and his length, where he get his hand in the chest, and move him inside. I think he has so many good traits that make him a really I would say good to great tackle prospect. I mean, he's still developing, so I honestly think he would be pushing for a Pro Bowl consideration if he would have stayed healthy. I know people talk about his pass protection, but you know what? I don't see it really. I mean, my judgment is a little different than what I hear people saying. I think that he actually is pretty good in pass protection, and he's fantastic in with run and running the ball. And him and the chemistry that he and Martin have together. I mean, why would you want to change that? They play off each other extremely well. I think that's a big part of it too. And I just, he's just one of those guys. I mean, he's a sealer. He moves well and he seals. He's not a guy that's going to square up on you, has good pad level, that will take on these bigger defensive tackles, which is what you'd be asking him to do if you moved him inside. So just everything about this is just seems like a bad idea. And I think Terence Steele is not only I think he's the easy right tackle for us, but I think he's going to be our right tackle for the future. And I just think let's not do one of those LC Collins things where it's like, well, maybe let's put him at guard and and do all this stuff, and you waste half his career because you don't know what to do with him. I mean, there's no point in doing it. This guy, he's trending up, he's playing better with each year. Keep him there. He's going to be a star.
To your point, Danny, I want to ask you, Brandon. Danny spoke about he's higher on his pass blocking ability than some people are, but what you can't question is his ability in the run blocking game. Like he's known for that. That's where he makes his name. Do you think this is an over exaggeration, or maybe just too much of an aggressive, stupid move, for lack of a better term, to try to seal up that left guard spot when it comes to like run blocking? Do they think that they can move Terence Steele inside and solve an issue that they may deem before the draft even gets here, and then add to that what your best O-line configuration is as well?
It's definitely like an over aggressive nature, because obviously Terence Steele, he's a heck of a run blocker, and I agree with Danny. I think he's a better pass blocker than people give him credit for. I think keeping him at right tackle is going to be where he's going to be. I'm in line with Danny. I think he's the right tackle for the next handful of years. As long as the numbers work out for him. I think he's just a talented guy. He's coming into his own as a right tackle. So I think it's an over aggressive play to move him to left guard. Just because he is good at the run blocking game. I just don't think it's the right configuration. And speaking of my configuration, I kind of alluded to it just a moment ago. I mean, Tyron Smith for me is still the left tackle until he says he doesn't want to play, or he just can't play anymore. And then Tyler Smith's going to be at left guard, and then center is Biotish. We know that. And then obviously Zach Martin's going to lock down the right guard position, because he's going to be a future Hall of Famer. We all know that. And then Terence Steele is the right tackle. And I'll just give you a couple bonus points here. I think right now I see the bench at this point. I see Adoga. I think he's going to make the team. They wouldn't have made a move for him. I think he's got some ability. I think he'll stick. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Farniok. I just want to see what's going to happen there. And then let's go. I'm curious with his injury history. I want to see how he does. But I do think the Cowboys are going to draft an offensive lineman at some point in the draft. I wouldn't be upset, no matter where they go. The Cowboys have done really well in the draft, drafting offensive linemen. And the guy that I like, I really like Andrew Voorhees out of USC. I think, obviously it's an ACL situation at the combine, which is unfortunate, but it's one of those things where the Cowboys have taken chances on injured players before late in the season, or in this case at the combine, and drafting a talented player at the latter part of the draft because of injuries. And that'd be a guy you could essentially just redshirt. The Cowboys have redshirted players before. They've done the quote unquote red shirt for guys like Josh Ball, somebody who I don't care for, but they've done it for him. And Wesco was essentially a red shirt. So it's not out of the realm of possibility of a guy like Voorhees just getting drafted in the maybe round 4, round 5, depending on where the Cowboys have them, and just doing it that way. But yeah, the configuration, I think it's Smith, Biotish, Martin, and Steele. That's the best 5 right now.
Did we lose Tony? Yeah, we lost Tony.
Oh man!
All right, well, Chris, I guess it looks like it's you for your best 5.
Okay, well, my best 5. If I was going best 5, I would go with Tyler at left guard, Tyron at left tackle, Tyler Biotish at center, Zach Martin at right guard, and then Terence Steele at right tackle. I'm not against, so if you want some consistency and if you want that kind of thing, I'm okay with just keeping Tyler Smith at left tackle. I wouldn't move Terence Steele though. I would keep him at right tackle and honestly save Tyron Smith for situations when you may really, really need him. I mean, we've not had Tyron Smith throughout the season at some points throughout his career just because he's been playing too much. It's been too reliant on him. He gets hurt. Like, it wouldn't be a bad thing necessarily, especially with how much we're paying him this season. It's very incentive based to have him come off the bench and maybe just be that like swing, or maybe be that like just insurance option. So I'm okay with either. I think if you're asking me the best possible five, Tyron, Tyler, and Terrence are all on the field at the same time. But if you want my opinion, maybe draft a left guard, maybe get Osiris out of Florida, maybe get someone really, really good early, since this is a pretty loaded roster right now and the Cowboys can kind of take whoever they want. I'm okay with that as well. So I just think that Terence Steele at left guard would be the worst option possible.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about that is I totally agree with you, Chris. And I kind of like was debating in my mind, like, do I want to preserve Tyron, or do I want to, if he's healthy, let him play? And I think that's tough because obviously you know his level of play, you know, when he's healthy, you want him out there, but at the same time, you also want him out there in the final stretch of the season in playoff time, and so it makes it difficult. But I think what answers that question is, you know, what you guys were talking about earlier. If the Cowboys do draft somebody early and they're able to contribute as a starter, then you don't necessarily have to roll Tyron out there. Then you know it's one of those things, the best five, unless there's a setback with Terence Steele, unless there's something else going on. I don't think it is absolutely necessary to play Tyron, you know, right away and maybe preserve him. I wanted them to do that with Jason Peters, to be quite honest. I know they were trying to like force him in because, you know, you want the strongest unit, but it's like this guy has trouble staying healthy too. So, and of course he did get hurt and he missed some time too. I think you just want to preserve his health. So that's my feeling on the Tyron Smith thing, but perfect timing for Tony.
Yeah, I apologize. Literally, my power went out, so that was perfect timing. You know, it's never happened before, but naturally, while I'm hosting it, that will happen. I'm sorry I missed everything you guys said. I'm sure it was awesome. You said some powerful things that cut my network. Two for this question here is, I'll start with you, Chris. I don't know if you gave your, did you give your online configuration?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
I did while you were gone.
Okay, is are currently on the roster?
I believe so. Yeah. No, I think that it'll end up just being Tyler Smith being kicked into the left guard position. That's what I think they'll end up doing. You know, obviously if they go first round, if they go like Osiris out of Florida, or if they go maybe someone else early in the first or second round, maybe that changes. But I think it's more likely that the Cowboys go best player available, and I don't think that Osiris will be the best player available at 26. I think someone flashy is going to fall, and Jerry Jones is going to get excited, and he's going to make a pick, kind of, like that splash pick. Maybe it's JSN, maybe it's someone else, but I think that it's going to end up being Tyler Smith at left guard week 1.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. If Tony was to ask me that question, I would say yes. But I want to throw in this thing too. And Brandon was kind of talking about this earlier. He just glossed over it, but I think that this could be a real possibility. Is what do you guys think about if the Cowboys trying to work Josh Ball into that left guard spot? Because we saw a little bit of him last season. It wasn't terrible. He was terrible. In pass protection, but he had some good reps too. So, is that out of the realm of possibility? Is maybe that he is on the roster and his name is Josh Ball?
Oh no way! I can't do it. I can't do it. I think the Josh Ball experiment for me is, I think it's done and over with. I'm ready to move on, to be honest. I'd like to see some other guys come in, and I really do like Osiris. And then as Rick says down there, Avila is another choice out of TCU. I'm very high on him as well. I think either one of those guys would be a good fit. I like Osiris because, to me, if you want a guard early, that's the guy to get. He reminds me, and I'm not saying he's going to have the career that this player that Dallas had wearing number 73 back in the day named Larry Allen, but he has a lot of those traits. He just has that mauler type ability. So if the Cowboys do take Osiris, that to me kind of tips their hand in the direction of maybe they're just going to use maybe Tyron Smith as kind of like a rotational guy, keep him in the mix a little bit. But that could be tipping their hand to say, okay, we know Tyron's not got a full season in the tank. let's solidify that left guard position because we know Tyler Smith can do well on the left side, and then you can also have Terence Steele on the right side. So to me, I think that might tip the hand of where the Cowboys are, how they view Tyron Smith, come draft time. But it's that Avila is also a good choice. There's a few other guys that I do like. I even like that Cody Mouch, the gap guy from North Dakota State. I think he'd be an interesting player as well. But yeah, I think left guard. I think on the roster at this point, I do believe it's Tyler Smith, and I think he's going to be our starter for the majority of the year.
I appreciate Danny stepping in and kind of playing co-host there. So I really do appreciate that. And I don't know, Danny, if you got a chance to even talk about that. I know you mentioned because you had talked about it before, Josh Ball inside, separate to the left guard spot. Have we kind of forgotten about Matt? Well, let's go. Does he figure into these plans at all in a serious manner, or are we kind of bypassing him?
No, and first off, Tony, I'll always be your swing host. So left side, right side, whatever you need, I'll fill in for you. And but no, I actually think, talking about let's go, and kind of one of the things that I mentioned, Ball is on the inside, is because I really think let's go is our top swing. I mean, if he could stay healthy, he's had issues with the shoulder that's been really hindering his career, and we didn't get to see very much of him last year. But I do think what little we saw some promise. So he's a player I could see the Cowboys, feeling confident about as being their swing. But that to me that opens up. What do you do with Josh Ball? And I know people don't. Everyone hates Josh Ball, and I want to talk about. We're talking about the players on our roster and who could help the team, and that's all this conversation is about in that regard. And so, and that's where I feel like the Cowboys they're going to obviously he's got 2 more years on his deal. They're going to try to figure out ways to make it work, and that could just be a position where he has some success, and part of that could be they've already made a decision that let's go, he's our best swing option. So why the Josh Ball experiment on the outside maybe over.
Sorry, yes, so that's a good. I do agree with that. Here. Now we've talked about the left tackle, the left guard, what could happen with on the roster, what they could do. But what I want to ask, and I'll start with you, Brandon, doing an offensive lineman in the
I say no. I think there's other positions that are more. I think they're more of a need. But it wouldn't surprise me if you had to put it on a level like a 1 to 10. It'd be a mild surprise to see that to see them go offense line. I think it's one of those things where they could go depending on the Tyron Smith situation. But I think there's other needs that are more important. I do think a wide receiver, a cornerback, linebacker, because there's some depth issues there. I think there are other positions that are a little bit more important at this point. But if the best player is available and it happens to be, and that's who the Cowboys feel is the right pick with Osiris, then I could see it happening. Personally, I'd like to see a receiver or a cornerback, and I've been sticking to that all off season. Get me a receiver and a cornerback in any order, first or second round, and then the rest of the draft, we could whatever the Cowboys want to do, that's cool. I just get me a receiver, get me a cornerback. I know we got Cooks, we got Gilmore. But those guys, to me, are kind of Band-Aids at this point, which they're good Band-Aids. They're going to make the team really good this year, obviously. I mean, Cooks will be here for 2024. But I just think, building towards the future, you got to have, some other options on the cornerback, and you do have to, you do need a quality receiver to come in. And I think Josh Downs is a guy that I've been seeing flying up boards with his route running, his ability. I've been watching a lot of tape on him. I think he's a guy that could sneak in there at 26. I'm seeing him going as high as the 25th pick, believe it or not, which, the Cowboys could be right at 26 and take Josh Downs. And I think a lot of people wouldn't be that upset, I don't think, because he is an electric player and he does. And I think, and here's the thing, Schottenheimer was actually at his pro day this past week here, the last couple of days. And he's very high in Josh Downs from what I've seen. So he'd be the kind of player that would be he'd be a jitterbug for that offense. And I think that's a guy to look out for as well.
So, Chris, I want to ask you, because you've been pretty vocal about some of their free agency steps and missteps in your mind. Do you think offensive line is the right move in the first round, or do you think that they still haven't done enough free agency wise where you feel like they should go in a different way?
I think it really all depends on who's available on the board. Like, I think here's the thing. After the Tyler Smith pick, I'm never going to judge the Cowboys draft selections again. I hated the pick, and it turned out like an amazing pick. So I'm not going to judge them regardless of where they go. But I can see a left guard. I really can. I think the Cowboys probably have a few skill position guys who they have at the top of their board who they're like, man, if they fall, like, let's go all in, let's get them. And if they get picked beforehand, I could totally see them just saying, okay, well, let's get a reliable left guard option. Let's fill out the offensive line. And really, I'm not opposed to that. It just really comes down to who's on the board. I'm very okay with beefing up the offensive line because, I mean, it's the most important position in football behind that quarterback position. So I'm perfectly cool with that. But if they were to pass on Jackson Smith and Jigba, or pass on some of these other players who I think could have a bigger impact early in the season and throughout the rest of the season and really throughout the future, then I would be kind of disappointed with it. So I'm okay with it, but I don't think it'll happen because I think someone's going to fall. I really do. I think someone's going to fall who maybe we're not really thinking is a possibility, and the Cowboys will be excited about it and draft him. But I wouldn't be shocked. I really wouldn't be shocked if they just ended up getting with the safest pick in the draft, which could be that left guard out of Florida, Osiris.
Danny, I'm interested in your take on this. I really don't know the answer. That's why I'm asking, and I'm intrigued what you'll think. Do you think that offensive line is the right pick here? And do you prescribe to best player available, or are you more attacking needs in the draft? Like, what is your overall draft strategy in your mind?
Yeah, I'm always best player available. I don't like to drive myself towards needs at all, and that's why the Cowboys front office, they do such a great job filling the voids and with all these unsexy free agent picks, is because they don't want to have any holes going into the draft where they can draft pure. And one of the things too is, I mean, the last 3 drafts, we've all kind of been surprised. I mean, we weren't expecting like CD, and we were thinking Patrick Surtain, cornerback, and when they took Micah, and then last year, like, we were all taken back into when they drafted Tyler Smith. So I think the Cowboys are very good about, like, sticking to, like, if they see a player that they like, if they have them graded high, it doesn't matter what we think. If they have them high, and Jerry will show you his draft sheet to prove it, if they have them high, they're going to take them, and it could end up being offensive line again. I don't think it will be, because I don't feel like there's a lot of players that are in that group. I also don't really like the idea of using my top draft resource on a guard. I mean, I prefer an offensive tackle, maybe with some guard flexibility. In a perfect world, I mean, I'm not saying no to anything, but it's not my ideal choice. So, I mean, if there could be one of the offensive tackles, that ends up sliding, then I think that's a different situation where the Cowboys could jump on offensive line. But I don't know. I don't expect it, because there's some really great corners and receivers, and those are premium positions. If you can get a talent at a premium position, absolutely, that's the direction you should go. So I don't think so, but it's possible. And I will finish it off with, I think the Cowboys have done a really good job with the depth they have. Even if it's Matt Farniok playing left guard, he's shown that that's not terrible. So they've had some free agent, with Chuma coming in, and the Cowboys got Tyron back, which some of us maybe thought that wasn't going to happen. So I think that the Cowboys have some depth. It could be better, but they have some depth. So they're certainly not forced to be making any, picks by need by any. And I also want to say I agree. I think it would be fantastic if they did take a chance on the Voorhees guy. If he slides to day 3, that would be a perfect situation to where you could capitalize on a development guy that for the future and at a low draft cost. So, I could see the Cowboys going that direction, to attack their line, because they don't have to do anything big in this draft.
So I want to talk to you and ask you about this, Brandon. Chris kind of touched on it, and I agree with it. I think that the easy answer is Tyler Smith at left guard. I think if you can get Terence Smith to his natural position, knowing his injury history and understanding it may not be a long-term solution, but it may be the best, week 1. Do you think if they don't at least, present that idea or possibly have that idea, that they're doing themselves a disservice in the here and the now for the sake of development down the road? I understand Tyler Smith is going to be the left tackle of the future, and future may be here now, but in 2023, in your mind, what is the best scenario in that situation?
I think Tony, that's a great question. I think you're right with the five guys that I have, that we talked about, Tyler Smith being a left tackle. I do agree with Chris where you could also make him into the swing tackle, and you could put Tyler Smith where you're going to eventually put him in at left tackle, Terence Steele at right tackle. So what I think could happen is they could attack that guard position, or like the guys have been saying, you could if a tackle falls, you could that might force your hand a little bit too. And I think Tyler Smith's a good enough player where I don't think it's going to necessarily stunt his growth as the future left tackle. But I think we're going to find out exactly how the Cowboys feel about this offensive line, and primarily Tyron Smith, by, I wouldn't even say just day one. I would even say day 2, day 3 here. By the end of the draft, we're going to know exactly where the Cowboys stand. And again, if Osiris is the guy at 26, I think that swing tackle situation is going to be more of a Tyron Smith situation, just because we just know his availability. Again, it's not there. So to me, that's the second most likely situation, I believe. I think the starting five that I mentioned is going to be the five. But I wouldn't be surprised if at some point Tyron Smith gets hurt and we have to make this move. And even a Farniok could slide in there. Farniok's been capable, like Danny said. I'm not opposed to that, but this draft is going to tell us exactly where the Cowboys stand. It's by when we're talking about this, the Tuesday after the draft, we're going to have a lot of ideas on where this offensive line is going to be heading into the 2023 season.
Makes a lot of sense. I wanted to get your take on it because I knew where you would come from. At least I thought I know where you come from, and it's a solid take there. I want to get to the super chat from What's a Matter. Thank you for the super chat. And I believe I had to confirm this is about Josh Ball, the man that we don't speak of. I know that Danny was presenting this idea. Danny, I want to ask you: is Josh Ball experiment at left guard not as absurd as maybe the Terence Steele situation is? Because I feel like at the same level, I don't think anybody was thinking of those two before today started at left guard.
Well, first off, I don't think you're honoring Wasamata's request. So I'll refer to him as Joe Bat. And I think that, I think that he's in the mix at left guard. He's a big player and a big guy. And, I think that he plays more in run support, stronger than he does in pass protection. And this is one of those type of situation we were talking about Terence Steele to guard, and Wine. How stupid would that be? Well, this is one of those situations where it makes more sense because he actually does do things better that could be more suitable to play inside. So I think I think Joe would be a candidate for left guard. I think the Cowboys have a lot of options, and you mentioned Farniok before too. He'll be in his third season, and remember he was a late round draft pick, and he kind of came along a lot farther than we expected. So I mean, who knows what he could be in year 3. So I think there are certainly lots of options. I will say the Cowboys, they have choices. I mean, I honestly think Tyron coming back, it just makes things a whole lot easier. The Cowboys can do so many different things now. They could draft a player on day 1. They don't have to. They could draft someone later. They've been doing really good at the guys they've been drafting. And you know what? They don't even have to draft them because Terence Steele's an undrafted free agent. And so these guys have a knack for picking players that can come in and make a difference. And so I honestly feel really good about the Cowboys offensive line. I think the Tyron Smith piece just changes everything because it just gives them a little bit of extra insurance, flexibility, or whatever you want to call it, and allows them to just be a little bit more flexible in how they pursue figuring this out. And I'm interested to see how it's going to play out. But it's one of the position groups that I'm not really overly worried about.
So, Chris, I mean, I know you had mentioned the Tyler Smith situation. I kind of want to wrap up the segment by asking you to kind of elaborate more. In your mind, do you feel reason other than messing up his development for why you wouldn't want him at left guard?
That's really the only reason why. I mean, I think that he could fit tremendously at left guard, especially in our run packages when you're pulling your guards and when you're having them move a lot, I think Tyler Smith could crush the left guard position. The only thing that concerns me is, again, the La'el Collins thing where you're switching up the offensive line position. He did really well. I mean, he was the best rookie left tackle, last season, in my opinion. He really impressed, and he impressed me so much last season. So that's the only thing that concerns me regarding Tyler Smith. I'm sure he could do it. I mean, to be fair, he practiced left guard throughout all of camp last season, I'm pretty sure. And then when Tyron Smith went down, he was like, oh, okay, we got to throw you at left tackle. I'm sure he's very capable of switching position and doing well. So I think best possible 5 on the field is Tyler Smith at left guard. The only concern and drawback I have is his development, and if that messes with his momentum right now that he has playing that left tackle position, and you got to kind of weigh risk versus reward. If they feel like that could mess with his momentum heading forward, you don't want to kind of mess around with your future at left tackle. So I don't know. That's why I'm not opposed to just drafting a left guard at some point in the draft who you feel comfortable with and keeping Tyler at left tackle.
Makes a lot of sense, and I kind of want to reset the room a little bit here. Like I said, we are keeping score. This is a regular round table. Just because it's not RJ doesn't mean I'm not keeping track here. I will say right now, as it stands, we have a 2-way tie at second place, and it's Brandon and Chris at 25 apiece. And right now, Danny's got 27. I give him 2 points right now because he held it down for me while I was gone. I'm sure you guys did a great job, but Danny, as the elder statesman in the group, he really kind of helped me when I got the internet gremlins, we like to say here. So with that being said, I want to kind of pivot to another Danny topic, something that Danny presented in our pre-show meeting, I guess we could say, in the business. One of the questions he wanted to present. So I'll ask you first, Danny, what storyline has the best chance of derailing the Cowboys offense in 2023? Is that the offensive line, or is it somewhere else that you may go for the reason for non-success on the offense this year?
Yeah, great question, by the way. I mean, whoever came up with that. I will say that to me, I feel, I've been one of the most critical people of Dak Prescott because I think that there are times when he doesn't play his best, and I think that has a huge impact on the Cowboys' performance, their offense, and as a team. So it would be easy for me to choose that because obviously I think we're all hoping that he plays better next season, but I'm not choosing that. I'm going to choose. I'm sticking to my guns in what I think is the Cowboys' biggest mistake they did this year, and that is changing out their play caller. So to me, I feel like the biggest thing that could derail this is Mike McCarthy's a fraud. Hypothetically, Mike McCarthy he was doing things that he was doing, and that got him fired in Green Bay, and they were playing. If you go back and look, I mean, his last full season in Green Bay, they were like the bottom 5 in third quarter point score. So I don't think McCarthy adjusts as well as people would want their offensive coordinator to do. So I am a little worried about that because I feel like everything else is there. I mean, we got Brandon Cooks now. I mean, how happy are we about that? I mean, obviously, I feel fantastic. Not only Cooks, but Michael Gallup's going to be further along in his recovery. So that looks outstanding. Dex, he's going to play better. I mean, that's a foregone conclusion. I'm not even worried about that. And then if you look at the offensive line and how well it's playing, there's just really nothing that could derail this thing except Mike McCarthy. So to me, if you ask me, how could this thing go south? It's going to be Mike McCarthy buries himself with and shows the whole entire world that was a mistake while the Chargers are playing in the conference championship game. So that's my biggest fear on the offensive side.
Brandon, Danny's talked about Mike McCarthy a lot. We've had, I've spoken, on my own show, First and 10 podcast, saying that, I think this is a big year for Mike McCarthy. It's obvious, it's glaring, it's his show now. So what Danny's saying to me has a lot of validity. I think there is a lot on his shoulders, and some people either sink or swim in those scenarios. Are you going in a similar fashion, or do you think it may be possibly the offensive line like we've been talking about all show?
That's exactly where I'm going. I'm saying the offensive line, and I'm not saying because of the guys we have on the roster. It's because of the injury history and the current injury situation with Terence Steele. We know Tyler Smith. We talked about it, ad nauseum. He doesn't play a full season. We get that. I just get my concern is if that rears ugly head like it has, and then Terence Steele doesn't come back to full strength. And modern medicine's a beautiful thing, but and the ACL is no joke no matter what. And if for some reason he's he just hasn't gotten it back. I mean, we saw what happened. It's a different position, but Michael Gallup had his ACL, and this past season was a lost season. I get I get it's a way different position, but you still have to be able to have that quickness off the line. And I think he'll be a-okay, but that could really derail the Cowboys this year, because God forbid, and I'm not putting any bad juju out there, but if Tyron Smith and Terence Steele, a combination or both of them, miss some time, and maybe the Cowboys didn't address anybody, on the offensive line for the draft, that could be an ugly situation, because then, yeah, you have all these playmakers, you have Dak Prescott, but if he doesn't have time to throw the ball, what are these playmakers good for then? I mean, Brandon Cooks, what's he going to do? You're just going to – it's like keeping them locked up in the barn, so to speak. You got to let the thoroughbreds go, and the offensive line, if God forbid something happens there, and and they just don't give Dak enough time to get these weapons the ball, then that's going to derail the season in my book. It all comes down to me, the offensive line. Dak Prescott is he is a great quarterback. I think we all can agree on that, but the offensive line to me is the most important group on this offense, because if the offensive line is good, that train is going to be moving. Dak's going to have a heck of a season. We're going to see a good season out of the running game and the pass game. It all starts up front, and it has to stay good if the Cowboys are going to be anywhere sniffing near NFC championships or even the Super Bowl, hopefully.
Chris, so you've had you stuck your neck out a little bit on social media and talked about Dak Prescott and just what this year means for him and what the rest of the team could look like moving forward if the Cowboys don't get over the hump. So I set that layup, that alley-oop for you here to say, are you going Dak Prescott as the number one thing that can derail, or are you going in a different direction here?
I have two answers. I think the offensive line is the biggest chance of derailing them in the regular season. I think Dak Prescott is the biggest chance of derailing them in the playoffs. And I hate to say that. I'm sure I'll lose points and I won't win the roundtable because of that. But he's 2-4 in the playoffs, and in 4 out of his 6 games that he's played in the playoffs, he's only thrown for 1 touchdown pass. And, those interceptions are a problem. I think that Dak Prescott is a top 10 quarterback. I think I have him ranked 10th. I really do. I think he's a great quarterback, and I think he's a great leader. And I think he's a great character to have in that locker room. I have nothing but praise for Dak, but he's shown throughout his career that he shines in the regular season, and he hasn't gotten over that playoff hump. So I'm not concerned about him during the regular season being the reason why this offense fails. I'm more worried about the depth at offensive line and the injury history of Tyron Smith and the injury history of even Terence Steele now coming back from that ACL. My concern, I think that Dak will get over the hump this postseason, as I think the Cowboys will represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. That's my early pick. I really do. I think this won't be the issue, but my biggest fear is just what history has shown us, and that's Dak unable to get past that divisional round of the playoffs. So I guess I have two answers, but I think I think the regular season and the postseason both deserve a different answer.
Danny, I'm interested in your take in this. I mean, because I know you've had some articles on Blogging the Boys on the site talking about Dak Prescott, and ultimately you had talked about what the need was for weapons, or if it's just Dak Prescott needs to step up in certain situations. So do you kind of echo the sentiment that Chris is talking about, or do you have a slightly different take on that?
Well, slightly different, but I mean, I definitely, I commend him for, pointing out something that needs to be said, is that there are times when Dak Prescott just doesn't play to the level that he should for the Cowboys to be successful. I don't really necessarily think it's he chokes in the postseason kind of thing. I really think he had some struggles in the regular season down the stretch, and also he played one of the best games I've ever seen against Tampa Bay, so he was ready to go in that game. He didn't play well the following week, but I think there are a lot of factors that kind of come into play. So I'm really not worried about Dak so much. Obviously, I really feel like he's got to play well for us to win a Super Bowl. There's no doubt about it. And if he does play well, I feel really confident about our chances, because, and like you mentioned, those articles that I wrote, Cowboys don't lose when Dak plays at a certain level. This isn't like Tony Romo's team when they still lose because the defense is just trash. No, they do not lose. When Dak plays well, the Cowboys win. But I want to just say, kind of circle this all together as far as why I chose what I chose as far as these 3 scenarios. And I think you both great points about offensive line. Certainly it's a possibility, but let's not forget they have been dealing with this for the last 3 years. I mean, 2020 was atrocious, health wise. Last year wasn't ideal. I mean, we lose, Tyron Smith has missed all kinds of games. So I feel like the Cowboys, we've actually already been there, and we've shown that we can survive because the Cowboys are making postseason runs in a couple of those seasons. So that's why I'm less worried about it. I mean, it's certainly something that could happen, but I think the Cowboys can get by there. And same with Prescott. I just feel like I think we're probably more likely to see the better version of him in that regard. That's why my answer is McCarthy, because unless we're going to time travel back to his early days in Green Bay where he's, the play calling was fantastic and he wasn't just relying on Aaron Rodgers to get him out of 3rd and 17s. I mean, unless that changes, I'd feel like we could be in line for maybe something a little more conservative, a little less exciting with, Kellen, and a little bit more like, what is he doing? The frustrations that I had watching Green Bay play, like, what is he doing? That's the reason. I feel like the sampling and the evidence that we have is why I'm putting my chips towards the McCarthy concern in that one.
So, it wouldn't be fair, Brandon, if I didn't give you a chance to kind of talk about the Dak Prescott conversation here. But before I do that, I want to give my take, and I want to give you the responsibility of telling me what I say is is it crazy or does it make sense. So it's all on you to tell me if I'm a lunatic with this take here. But I think, when you look at Dak Prescott, I think for me, he's squarely entrenched in the top 10 inside of it somewhere. Wherever you want to put him, that's totally up to you and fine. But where I'm comfortable at this point, at least what I've seen as he goes into his 30th year in the NFL, is I don't know if he'll ever be like top 5. I don't know if he'll ever be a consensus top 5 quarterback, but I don't think he needs to be. If he can be in that 6 to 10 with this roster, this team can win a Super Bowl. If Dak Prescott's anywhere solidly in that 6 to 10 range, I don't think we need to see Dak Prescott in the same breath as a Pat Mahomes or any of these guys that are in the upper echelon of quarterbacks. The team that they're building around him, or what they're doing around him, should be enough as long as he plays somewhat mistake-free football. So again, I don't know if Dak will ever be a top 5 guy. I guess that's up for debate if you ask somebody in the fan base. So before I ask you for your Dak Prescott take on this situation, is that a crazy take on my end?
No, I think it's a very fair take. I do think I'm a little more optimistic that he can be a top 5 quarterback, but I am more in line where I think he's safely in that 6 to 10 range. And like you said, you made a great point. Top 6, 6 to 10, it's still, with the players you have around him on offense, with the Micah Parsons and the rest of the boys on defense, that is all you need, to make it to the promised land. So Tony, your take was not crazy at all. I'm sitting here listening to it. I'm pretty much in line with everything you said.
Perfect.
Pandering.
I love that. Go ahead, Chris. You got something?
Yeah. And honestly, I agree with you too. But my thing is that's why I think the Dak Prescott factor is the biggest like X factor to me, because at the end of the day, it's going to be up to his interceptions, his ability to step up when things go sour around him, when things aren't going well. So that's why he's kind of that X factor, in my opinion, in the playoffs. I mean, in his 6 games, he's thrown 5 interceptions. And like last season was a turnover problem. So I think that's overall, I think he will do it, and I think he will get over the hump. But that's why that's my answer for the playoffs, is because he's yet to show that he can do it. Everything else on this roster is looking about as good of a Cowboys roster as I've been alive for on paper. I know I'm young, but still, that's, it's saying something. This defense has no reason to not be the best defense in the NFL next season after adding Gilmore and after adding these defensive draft picks. And this offense, I mean, it's gotten better, in my opinion, with adding Brandon Cooks and what you're going to do in the draft. So it's really going to come down to the unknown. And I think Danny's point too, like Mike McCarthy is an unknown. So I think that's a good choice as well. I think it's going to come down to how Mike McCarthy calls plays and how Dak Prescott handles the football, and if he's able to not turn the ball over as much as last season. So that's why I said I think Dak Prescott would be high on my list of things that concern me, but not because he's bad, just because everything else around him is so great, in my opinion, and proven at this point.
Brandon, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, you guys make great points. I think Dak, with the weapons that he's going to have this year, I think this is the best assortment of toys he's had on offense, arguably, since he's been a Cowboy, and in my opinion. I think at this, with how Dak has played in the postseason, I feel like especially last year, sure they had the really good, the wild card game where it ended Tom Brady's career. We got the first win over the GOAT. That was great. But to me, what reared its ugly head was in the divisional round, which we were getting closer to that NFC Championship, Super Bowl caliber type performance from him. But I think my issue is what toys did he have to play with last year? It was you had CeeDee Lamb, of course. Dalton Schultz, he had his moments, but sometimes you don't know what you're going to get out of Dalton Schultz. Michael Gallup, I give him a pass because he's still coming back from a serious injury. So to me, I think when you're adding a Brandon Cooks to this team, and Michael Gallup's another year removed from the ACL, which they've said in the past, and you've seen it on the field with all these different players over the years. Then second year after the ACL is where these guys get back to the closest of their previous form. So for me, it's Dak Prescott. I'm not too concerned. If he becomes a top 5 quarterback, I am happy. I'll be ecstatic. But 6 through 10, that's enough for me to he's still going to be in the upper echelon of quarterbacks in the league. And the offensive coordinators situation, Mike McCarthy, that whole thing, I think it's going to work out fine. I'm not too concerned. At the end of the day, they're going to put. I feel like the team's going to be, especially McCarthy. He's, if he doesn't get the job done this year, he's, I think he's out the door. So I think he's going to lay all the chips out, and this is why they have the Brandon Cooks. This is why they're bringing all these different pieces in, because I do think they're really going to start using their players to the best of their abilities, and that includes Tony Pollard as well. I mean, that offense, CeeDee Lamb. To me, it's going to take. I think this offense is honestly. I think you might both disagree. You all disagree with me on this, but I think this offense is going to go to a different level than we've seen in recent years. I just think the offense is going to be really good, and I think Dak's due for a monster season, and I think the interception totals are going to go down a good chunk as well.
Awesome. Speaking of a monster season, I want to ask Chris. I mean, you can pick yourself here, but who do you think took the crown tonight? I know we're wrapping it up here, and I want to ask and see. Again, I'm not above picking myself. I've done it many times. Are you going to go that route here?
I picked myself many times, so I'm not against that route either, but I'm not going to do it tonight. I'm going to give it to Danny because he did step up when you were having your internet gremlins coming at you and the power went out, and I think he gave some very solid answers. I mean, I think that Danny should take it. I think Brandon did great. I think we all did great. I think we all gave different opinions and gave some insight and gave some facts to back it up, but I would have to give it to Danny here.
Danny, what do you think? You going to go modest, or are you going to go ahead and pick yourself?
Yeah, no, I'm going modest. I'm not picking myself, and I'm never going to pick myself. I'm not going to be, what is it, Reese Witherspoon in election voting for herself or something. I will not do that. But I am going to share the love a little bit, and I'm going to just swing it over, over to this direction here and go with Brandon. I actually think everybody made some great points tonight, and there was a lot that I agreed with. But I think that Brandon mentioned some additional options too that could come into play. Some draft picks. Some candidates that he threw out there, and so yeah, I'm just gonna. That's where I'm gonna go tonight.
Perfect. So, and I'm glad that the commenter just said that. So I actually want to ask one more question for Danny and for Brandon real quick. Chris, I'll get your take on it too, but it'll be more for like a constellation. Real quick, in a sentence or two, what else do you want to see from them pre-draft? I'll start with you, Brandon. What do you want to see from this team that you haven't seen yet leading up to the draft?
I just want to see way more smoke screens. I just want to see all the smoke screens in the world, because it is smoke screen season. And if you have the smoke screens up, a lot of times those players that you really want at 26, they might make the slide because maybe the Giants and some other teams say, oh, they're not going to draft this guy or that guy. No way. They can maybe make a swing or to the next round. So smoke screens, I want to see more of those. Let's keep doing that. That's what I want to see.
Danny?
Well, I don't know if I'm going to get my wish pre-draft, but if there's one thing that I really want to see happen is I want them to lock up this quarterback we've been talking about, because I think the price is going to go up, and I think the Cowboys are absolutely, they must get it done before the season starts, because they're going to be in a really bad spot if they have to do this negotiation this time next year. So to me, that is why I am choosing that is my one thing that I still would like to. I think they could tie a nice little bow on this excellent offseason I think they're having by locking up Prescott long term.
Chris, you still get to stand on the podium, but it's not for the gold. But what do you think here? In a sentence or two, what do you want to see pre-draft they haven't done so far?
I would love to sign Jonathan Hankins. Nah, listen.
Yeah, I
no,
know, you
seriously.
should, though. Yep, winner.
seriously, though, since I've already lost, according to you and according to Brian in the chat, I'm going to throw a Hail Mary and just give my honest opinion. It's not going to happen, but I'm going to keep pushing it. I want DeAndre Hopkins. I want to get DeAndre Hopkins, especially if the value is going down lower and lower, and it's going to be somewhere in a day 3 pick. Why not? Why not go all in? If we want to give Dak as many weapons as possible to win, let's do it. Let's get DeAndre Hopkins. Let's get CeeDee Lamb. Let's get Michael Gallup, Brandon Cooks. Let's draft a tight end. Let's get Bijan. Let's get the whole offense cooking. This defense is already the best defense in the league. Let's give Dak as much weapons as possible. So, Hail Mary. I know it's not going to happen the same way I'm not going to win tonight, but I want DeAndre Hopkins at wide receiver.
That was a Jalen Hurts Hail Mary, by the way.
About 10 yards. And, the hits keep on hitting. And Danny, guess what, brother? Danny's the winner tonight. I'm going to give it to Danny. Danny, you got a acceptance speech. They like you. They really like you. I know they said love you, but go ahead. Danny, the floor is yours.
No, it's I'm always honored to be the Roundtable winner. Usually it's some obscure scoring system that RJ has. So, I'm not hanging up these things on my refrigerator, but it's nice to get it with Tony making the decisions, and certainly all the feedback we get from the commenters. It means a lot. So it's great with sharing this opportunity with these guys and just being able to talk Cowboys football, and that's definitely that makes me a winner to be able to do that.
Totally agree. What do you think, Brandon? Number 2, it's the first loser.
No, I was gonna say you didn't even ask me who I wanted to pick as the winner. I wasn't even gonna pick myself this time. I was picking Danny all along, so I'm glad it worked out this way. I think Danny did a heck of a job, and he held the fort down with your internet gremlins. I know a thing or two about that, so I feel your pain on that, Tony. And Tony, you did a heck of a job tonight as well, even with the internet gremlins. And Chris is always bringing that fire with that DeAndre Hopkins stuff. I'm not totally in a disagreement with the DeAndre Hopkins. I think it's a little wild that it'll happen, but I think everybody did a heck of a job. But Danny just knocked out of the park on all fronts tonight. So I think it's a great choice on your part, Tony.
I appreciate it. Honestly, it's so my luck that this would happen on a day that I'm hosting instead of just somebody on the roundtable, which, I do a lot. So I do appreciate that. And in typical fashion, I'm supposed to do something crazy here. But Chris, you can either do something wild, get us out of here with a sound, or delegate it. And don't pick Danny. He won. So it's going to either be you or Brandon. Do something crazy. Let me hear it. What do you got?
If you let me know what
anything you
is.
want. Think about the most obscure, crazy, just out of your mind sound that you can think of.
I can make a pretty good elephant sound.
I'm in. Let's hear it.
Do it.
It's not bad.
Not bad at all.
It's pretty solid. Yeah, I'm about to say it's pretty solid.